Hi, I'm Dan Zanka with the Prostate Cancer Foundation, and you are watching a very special segment of Profiles in Leadership. Through my work with the Foundation and my cancer blog, My New York Minute, I have the honor of meeting and talking with hundreds of fellow patients and brothers in prostate cancer. Recently, I met with several of them at a special event in Washington, D.C. called A Celebration of Science. We recorded the weekend, our discussions and interactions, and I hope these will serve to help many other fellow patients, their caregivers, and families everywhere. Tom Black here, Bill Morgan.
Prostate Tom. I didn't say hello to you. I'm Jim. Hey, Rusty. Nice to meet you.
This is our group. This is our group.
I'm Bill Curry. In 2007, I had surgery for what we thought was localized prostate cancer, but at pathology, they found some lymph node involvement. So I'm now in my 6th year of being an advanced prostate cancer survivor.
Winter would like to say a few words.
I would just like to say that I'm so happy to see all of you guys here after losing my dad, seeing so many faces that have beat prostate cancer and beat this terrible disease. I wish all of you guys the best of luck, and thank you for being here.
Thank you. There's a lot of people who don't.
My name is Rusty Keys. I'm a prostate cancer survivor. I was diagnosed in year 2008, age 54. I've been a firefighter for approximately 27 years in the city of Oakland.
It's like a 38 or a 42 or something?
It's a 48-inch frame.
48.
Yeah.
And you'd rather ride that than with 650 wheels?
Yeah.
I'm Rick Davis, and I was diagnosed in November 2006 with locally advanced prostate cancer, stage 3A. I opted for radiation, both IMRT and SEEDS, and I also received 27 months of hormone therapy, Lupron.
My name is Bill Morgan. In October of 2009, I was diagnosed with prostate cancer. In January of 2010, I had a radical prostatectomy at Johns Hopkins. I decided to be aggressive and also did hormone treatment along with the radiation. And please report I'm feeling fine.
Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. We're going to be starting within the next 5 minutes.
Before we begin today's program, I'd like to introduce some very special guests we have with us. And we don't usually do this, so we're taking a step back from the science and looking at the people. First, I'd like to ask all of Team Winter to stand up and be acknowledged. Dawn, Ruger, Magnum, Yukon, Winter. I'd like to, at this point, invite Winter Vernecki to come up to the stage and help me recognize some other very special people. Next, I'd like to call Robert Hess. He was diagnosed at 58 in 2003 and treated, but he is also founder of the Pony Express, a group of motorcyclists who every year transverse the country carrying the message of prostate cancer awareness.
Sunday is the end of the final day of the 171-day, 25,000-mile Prostate Cancer Pony Express. And Sunday morning, we come into Washington, D.C., go to the Capitol, into the White House, have our picture taken in front of the fence saying, "Hey guys, pay attention to prostate cancer."
Next, I'd like to call Jim Higley up. He was diagnosed at 44 with advanced disease.
The timing of my cancer diagnosis came 18 months after I lost my a young brother to brain cancer, 2 years after I lost my father to ureteral cancer, and after I lost my mother also to brain cancer. So I became the fourth consecutive member of my immediate family with a cancer diagnosis. I'm also a single father raising 3 kids alone.
Greg Hoffman, diagnosed at 62 in 2010. He has undergone radiation therapy, and he is now in androgen deprivation therapy.
I'm proud to be part of this exciting celebration of science that is putting a face on the people behind the scenes that are working on curative processes for people like me with cancer, but I'm also happy that I can come here and be a face of the cancer patient.
Then there's Bill Moore, diagnosed at 45 in 2011. He is considered cancer-free, but is also currently battling lupus, which complicated his treatment for the disease.
I'm here in Washington, D.C. to learn more about the research and to find ways on being able to spread awareness more of prostate cancer.
Each of these men on the stage represent more than 1 million men and their families around the world who are challenged with prostate cancer. They are the reason we are here. They are our raison d'etre, if you will. Esteemed PCF researchers, you are the world's elite force to find cures to help men like us and so many others. We are here to voice our sincerest appreciation for your commitment and the hope your work brings to us and so many. We remain ever grateful and say Godspeed and thank you.
On behalf of the Board of Directors of the Prostate Cancer Foundation, millions of men with prostate cancer, and speaking on behalf of Michael Milken and many you're going to meet over the weekend, thanks for being here, and I think you'll find this meeting not your average, but rather a quantum leap set of discussions about how we're going to end up conquering and preventing this disease.
I'm Thomas Palakia. I've been diagnosed with prostate cancer, and the diagnosis was the fall of 2010. It's a year now since my last hormone shot, and in October I get my next blood reading, and I'm just in that waiting stage to see what the next blood reading is going to be. I gained in the first hour of the first session. It was amazing how much I learned in that first hour, and then 2 more sessions after that. I learned a lot. I learned an awful lot. I learned a lot about the science. I learned a lot about the government, and I learned a lot about how many really dedicated people are working on this. And there's still some things that I learned that I probably don't know yet that I learned.
Ladies and gentlemen, let the fireworks and the celebration of science begin as you join me in welcoming our keynote speaker, Mr. Mike Milken.
Thank you, Andy, and I just want to tell you, I'm the happiest person to be able to be in the room with each of you tonight. Today, we are part of a 3-day event. That 3-day event really symbolizes our goals, and the word imagine on your programs that you should have all received here. With 1,200 people that are going to join us over the next 3 days here in Washington, D.C. to try to change the future for the world. You can dream big thoughts. You can wish that they occur and try to change the world. But you need a team of people that can make that happen.
I'm Craig Penn. I was diagnosed with advanced prostate cancer right out of the box due to a bout of hematuria, blood in the urine. I came off of hormone therapy in this past about 6 months ago, and I am waiting. To me, cancer is like, my favorite metaphor is Space Mountain at Disneyland. It's like a roller coaster ride in a dark room. You're riding up and down and you don't know what's coming next. And you're on that ride by yourself.
Years ago, a medical writer told me that there were only two kinds of health stories. One was new hope, and the other was no hope. And I can tell you that what we've been hearing at this meeting, there's lots of new hope, there's reason to be hopeful, and we're going to get there.
That's why I have the hat on.
Right. What is that building? That's the National Cathedral? Yeah. Cathedral, okay.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Jim. That's exactly what it was. I'm doing
Good healthy blueberry, pineapple, salmon, tomatoes. It's the healthy prostate cancer diet. Try it.
In my case, starting in 2006, while well within normal ranges for my age, my PSA in 2006 was 1.3. In 2007, it went to 1.5. And in 2008, 1.8. And then in 2009, it made the jump to 3. But that steady trend up should have been a red flag. And that's really, I think, a lesson learned from my situation for anyone watching this. You know, if you're going to your family doctor, you know, ask the question, do you know about PSA velocity? Do you understand it? What are my numbers? And I think the other thing that's a lesson learned, I've thought about this, and after talking to a lot of the guys here, you know, family doctors are great, and, you know, we all, depending on your relationship, you rely on them, that's true. But I think, like the ladies do, I think an annual visit to your urologist for a man, you know, whether you have anything going on or not, it's probably a good idea when you get to a certain age, because the urologists know what they're feeling.
My PSA never spiked, ever.
Not even during, at the time of diagnosis, you were still 1.5.
Still 1.5.
Okay, I just want to make sure I understood that.
Since PSA didn't work for me, DREs are really important. It took the urologist about, I don't know, 2 seconds to say, ooh, whoops, bad prostate. Those were his words. And so that DRE is equally important in my book anyway.
Well, that's the same thing that happened with my GP and the urologist. The GP set up the appointment, but that day told me the prostate seems fine.
Yeah.
And I went to the urologist, and it didn't take more than 2 seconds for this guy to say, you got a bump.
While my PSA that ultimately caught this was an accidental PSA, what that triggered was, like you, I was living in a new city at that time, went back to my old primary care physician from another town, curious if I could get my hands on all my other physicals, which I was able to get. And those, he actually ran, unbeknownst to me, PSAs all throughout my 30s. And all of those, when we went back and pulled them back together, they built a case.
Yeah.
So it emphasizes what you're saying, but it also emphasizes the importance of information sharing from when you change caregiver.
I do think we have to be our own advocates, because when I have a very good PCP who I like, he doesn't believe in PSA testing. And so if I relied on him, I would never have gotten tested. And in fact, I went from, I wasn't getting regular tests, but I was tested, I think, in 2005 at 2, and then he never tested me the following year, and I happened to be seeing a urologist for kidney cyst issues, and he said, well, let's do it, and tested me, and I was at 10. So if I would have had a PCP who followed up, and he would have been testing me every year, we may have gotten this well before I got to a locally advanced stage, and I could have been done and dusted in 90 days.
My doctor is like 2 years younger than me, I think, and he has been such an advocate for making sure you get tested, both PSA and DRE every year, and I'm thankful that from one year to the next, he said, there's something wrong, let's get you to a urologist. So it couldn't have happened any better. I was getting annuals, but it just went through the ceiling.
You can't rely on the GPs and the PCPs. That's the problem, because some are like yours, and others don't believe in it.
Aren't we talking about behavior change for men? You know, so we have, you know, cases of prostate cancer that are coming late, but these early cases. So what does it take, and, you know, what's the message out to men saying, look, you know, we have to be responsible, you know, for our own health. And these critical factors, I mean, we need to track ourselves. Now, we all track our stock portfolio, okay, pretty carefully, you know, and it's sports scores and everything like that. So how do we, you know, leveraging on, you know, what Rick said, so how do we tell guys, look, you know, it's really important. It's not so much for you, okay, because if you die, any of us dies, you're gone, but what you're leaving behind, okay, is your family, all right? So maybe the hook is, it's a responsibility thing, just like you have to have car insurance, house insurance, life insurance, okay? You know, you could kind of tag this as family insurance.
Where I work, there's a lot of young individuals who are getting this, and if you get them recognizing and doing the annual examinations, this could keep them in the production of working. It's a product, you know, whatever they do, whether they work in the stock market, on, you know, construction, whatever. When that person passes away, he or she cannot provide for his or her family.
What is it like living with prostate cancer? Anyone want to take a stab at that?
I have great days 99% of the time, you know, just as a person, even before I had it. But some days, you know, you kind of feel down. You know, you don't feel like you're all there, which you're really not. But in general, you know, it's it's different. You know, everything just doesn't seem to work like it used to, and you wish it did, but it's not going to come back.
I find myself measuring everything that happens to me in that frame. The frame of, is this the next thing that the prostate cancer is going to do to me? If I am constipated one day, oh, it must be prostate cancer is doing this. If I don't feel like eating, why am I going to lose weight? It must be, you know, it's this, it's there, it just sits there. It's
black cloud.
It's this cloud that just sits there and says, oh, you know, something's going to happen. It's
the overhang?
Yeah, it's the overhang.
I heard physical, and I heard psychological, and I guess I'd be curious to know, you know, kind of what's the balance there in terms of living a day to day. Is it the psychological issue?
I was going to say that it is psychological in that regard for me. I consciously push that out and say to myself, you can't do that, and then go on with my life. We'll get into this, I guess, later on, but it's this concept. I disagree and I object to the concept that we're in a fight, that this is combat of some sort, or this is a battle. I don't like words. I don't even like the word survivor. I just don't think that's the attitude that is healthy for us.
So what attitude do you think?
My attitude is that it's a continuum. Mm-hmm. Everybody dies of something.
Right.
Cancer is life. It's not death. It's part of life. I'll tell you a story, and I no longer have this urologist, and I think I told a couple of people this story, but when I was midway in Lupron treatment, I started having memory problems, and I was really getting annoyed with this. And I was saying to him, you know, I really want to stop this Lupron as fast as I can. And he said, well, what's the side effects all about? What are they like? And I made a joke. I said, what were we talking about? And he didn't like that. He didn't like that. He said, you have to take this serious. This is a very serious issue. And then he said, you're fighting for your life. And I said, wait a minute. I said, you're fighting for my life. And I said, and if I make a joke, deal with it. I'm your patient. To me, it's a life. It's a continuum. I don't want to be treated that way. I don't want to be looked at like I'm different.
One of my core issues is that men have to be prepped much better before they go on to ADT, and they have to be supported much better whilst they're on ADT. And there are certain things that we've done along the way, and I'll give you a brochure that we got printed up at UCSF. We're starting a side effects clinic at UCSF that I've been pushing for a while. Men need support. This issue of depression, which keeps coming up time and time again, I mean, I'm fortunate. I've lived with depression most of my life. It's a genetic problem in my family. I was ready for the depression. I just doubled my meds, and I knew the black cloud came down. I knew the black cloud was going to lift. But there are men here sitting in this room who have never experienced depression. When that black dog comes for the first time, you just want to kill yourself. And we are not prepared for this. Lupron is like slow drip chemo. And the impact of Lupron has affects so many different areas of your body that a urologist who is a surgeon or a radiation oncologist is not well prepared to deal with.
Everyone, from my urologist to my oncologist, radiation oncologist, oncology nurse, they all spoke of depression. To the point I was like, wow.
I guess
But, you know, when you get down into it, I knew what it was. And I had very short episodes. It would be like a Saturday and a Sunday, and then little things in between. But on the other hand, I mean, I was so hit over the head with it, and we should be warned. But I remember the radiation oncology nurse leaning over saying, "Are you okay?" And I told the story to someone. I said, "What do you mean? Are you really okay?" And I just said, "If you think I'm going to kill myself, that'd be rather productive to what we're doing here." But yeah, a lot of men go through this and they never hear the word depression.
I think you were lucky. I mean, I think if you polled the men, I mean, how many men in this room have been on Lupron for any period of time?
I've never been on Lupron.
You've never been on Lupron.
There are other drugs out there.
So when I say Lupron, an LHRH drug. How many have been on an LHRH drug?
Right.
Okay. So of there's 5, 6 of us. How many do they feel were properly warned about the impacts of Lupron?
Just you and I.
Pretty good.
And like you, maybe it's us, because like you, I suffered from depression in and out of my life. And maybe it's our attitude in some degree.
Let me ask a slightly different way, and that is, how many of those of us who felt like we were warned also went out and did some research on our own? I mean,
that's
a given, right?
Gotta do that.
So, yeah, okay.
I feel I was informed, but no one really stressed the depression. It was more loss of libido, fatigue, and things like that. But that didn't really come up.
My wife did. She told me all about that. She said, "You know what's happening to you?" At one point, she noticed it. You know, and she really woke me up to that. Because those things were happening, and I was, you get into this zone, and you know, you start spending your day dealing with these things, and you forget that someone else can see this too, so that people outside you can see it.
So how many here have had a real crash and burn day?
Oh God, many.
And what's that like?
I had 3 experiences, all of it while I was on Lupron, and it lasted a day of just detachment, sitting in a chair, just in a black hole. And I got myself out of it twice by watching the movie Rocky, which I find to be a very uplifting.
You're a strange man.
Hopeful. And the third time, I had a talk with myself that, you know, you can't do this, you can't let it happen, get over it, move on.
Yeah, I think forewarned is forearmed, because then you can say 2 rungs up, 2 rungs up, 2 rungs up, and you know in a day or 2 you'll be fine.
Right.
Most of the times.
I think one of the most difficult things for me, and I've had a number of crash and burns, and I don't know how many of you have thought about this, but it's wonderful to be able to pick up the phone, or to have somebody say, "Pick up the phone and call me. Don't go through this alone." And the problem for me is, it's been a number of times in recent months that I've been crashing and burning. I'm into the second half of the Lupron treatment, and it is so cumulative, and I can't predict when it's going to happen. It's just, you know, I wake up and I'm having a fine day, made breakfast for the wife, she's off to work, I'm doing some chores, and just all of a sudden I fall apart. I just sit down and I say, what the? And I can't explain why that happens. And sometimes, an hour or 2 later, I'm okay, just a little thing. A couple of times it's been a big crash and burn. And one of the things that's been helpful for me is my wife can see it. And she says, "I'm just gonna give you some space. If you want me, I'm here. Sometimes just come over and do a little rub on the shoulder or something. Just a touch, I'm here. And that helps me a lot. But sometimes you can't, and I just hope the next morning I get up and it's going to be better. And a lot of times it is. I get up the next morning and she says, how are you? I said, I'm okay. I'm just going to go slow here and just get through the day. And it seems to be okay. But it's very difficult.
I feel like the odd man out. So I've not experienced depression, and I think one thing that's worth noting is that Lupron is not the only LHRH drug that's out there. And I have talked to guys who, having changed from Lupron to some other drug, found that helped them. I'm not saying that's the solution. But again, everybody, as we know, everybody responds differently to everything about prostate cancer. There are no two similar courses. But it might be something worth considering if you're talking to your doc about LHRH antagonists or agonists. There are choices out there.
The biggest thing for me is worry. I just worry about, God forbid, someday this coming back. And for me, I would have to say that's the number one thing about getting prostate cancer that's affected my life. It's just that I get up every day and I worry about it. And I think that's the biggest thing for me, by far, the biggest side effect. I don't know that necessarily I'm going to blame Lupron for that. I think it's just a personality type of, and maybe the way I'm wired. But for me, that's been the biggest issue.
The one thing I can share is my experience when Dr. Myers, this is now a year post-surgery, when I met with him, and he was basically explaining to me that from his experience, guys like me tend to see recurrence 12 to 13 years post-surgery. And here I was 45, and that was just like about the worst kind of
That's devastating.
message I could hear. And so we set up my all my plan for, as he called it, stacking the decks in my favor. And I remember, and he set me up on a 3-month, getting checked every 3 months. I remember saying to him, how long are we going to do this? And he just looked at me in the eyes and he said, until you die. And that was like the turning point for me, where I really realized what I was dealing with. But he also said the most powerful thing to me, which really framed kind of my mindset. And he said, think of this as a life illness that we're going to manage. He said, get over trying to beat this and win. He said, you're going to manage it. He said, a lot of people live in this world managing their illness, and that's the mindset I want you to have. And for me, that really helped, because I wake up every day and I'm managing my cancer.
I'm more in the mental side, right? So I'm 9.5 years. I'm coming up on that 12 years, recurrence cycle, and I'm acutely aware of that. And so it is there all the time. It's kind of that monkey on your back. So what I do, you can look at me, I used to be like 165, okay, which is my normal lifelong weight. So I'm down to 150, and that's through diet and exercise, because I think that's the only thing I can do, right, to push this recurrence back.
There's a psychological benefit to that is so absolutely important. I went to a cancer conference once, and one of the speakers said, cancer is a metaphor for loss of control. And anything you can do as a, whatever you want to call it, Tom, patient, survivor, whatever, anything you can do that gives you a sense that you are exerting some control over what you do day in and day out, and that gets down to diet, exercise, your attitude, and those are the things that will empower you and deal with some of this crud.
It's not always easy.
Exercise is critical. I mean, I've taken a commitment that I will help Greg over the next 3 months, and we will get him exercising. It's going to make a huge difference in his life, because so many of the side effects from Lupron can be modified with exercise. And if you are not on Lupron, exercise is just as important in terms of you managing the disease. The second issue is that I have found it very helpful personally to live in the moment.
The thing that makes me depressed is in my relationship. On my second marriage, I've been married 5 years, and this poor woman at that time had been hit. I mean, when we met, I was a healthy individual, and One thing I haven't heard anybody really touch on as far as the depression is the fact that your relationship is taken to a whole different level. No matter if you're gay, you're straight, whatever, your relationship changes. You don't have as much of that intimacy. What you end up having is you have more of a, your friendship comes more into play than anything else. And that's basically where I get depressed. And I see her with a smile on her face, and it just gets me every time.
I was raised in a family of boys, and I was raised with an attitude. My mental health, I'm in control. I'm not one of those guys who ever is going to need someone to help me with that. And I think a lot of guys, I mean, I might be wrong, but I think a lot of people feel. And one of the most powerful things, one of the most powerful gifts I've given myself in the last 5 or 6 years is the gift of working with people who are professionals, who have really guided me through things I never knew about. And it was scary. It was scary to walk into that first therapist room and make myself vulnerable. But what I learned in doing it was there's so much I don't know, and there's so many things that I'm actually in control of that I didn't know how I could be in control of those emotions, those fears, those relationships. And to me, that's one part of this journey that is, I think, so overlooked and it's a journey of adversity. It's not just to prostate cancer or cancer, it's any adversity. And to me, that's a guy's issue, is to not be afraid to get help. It has been the leading thing that has pulled my life back together. And it's kind of one of those things I'm more in control of. It's like my emotions and my feelings are real. And I know I've learned enough about how it works that they don't scare me.
You know, I go to work every day, and a lot of people, you see all these people rushing to work. And I always say I'm the luckiest man in the world. Even though when you look at something, you kind of say, you get a little down. I see all these people running to work. I go to work, I'm relaxed, but everyone else seems to have all these other pressures. So I use that as a positive for me, because I just go look, say I'm taking my time. I walk the stairs, I don't take escalators, and I just do things. And I mean, I'm fortunate enough to work wherever I am working. I catch a boat to work, and I think about the positive things. I say, I'm going across the bay. People would dream to do this for a living. I say I'm the luckiest man in the world. And so I try to flip, like the term they use on the street, flip the script, turn it around and say, I got the same wife, 3 kids, they're healthy, I'm good. So, you know, as long as everyone else is doing fine, I'm doing fine. And, you know, because you see all the people in the world, they worried about all this stuff. Hey, I'm breathing, I get up in the morning, you know, I do the best I can.
This is the number one thing about guys. I do a lot of work in my professional life dealing with fatherhood and men, and we always think we can solve everything. We can solve our professional career, our marriage, our wives, our kids. We can't, and it's okay. We're human beings. And so every issue we're talking about today, including stress for sure, to me, when you're talking, Greg, about your predisposition, awesome. My sense is you're aware of it now, but you don't have to solve it yourself. Get support systems, help professionals, or whatever it is. Guys do not have to solve. We can't solve everything ourselves, and if we keep thinking as a gender that we can, we're going to continue to fail.
I don't know how guys who are working handle all of this. I mean, I have been in retirement since before diagnosis, and so I don't have the pressure and stress of a job. I don't have the time commitment. I have just about my full schedule I can use to do whatever I want to push back at this. And that's a luxury for somebody. I've been stunned listening to you guys at the youthfulness at which you were diagnosed. You know, this is usually thought of a disease for men who are in their 60s or older. And I've heard ages in this room of 40s, 50s, very early in life, lots of years and family ahead of you. And I think that's a part of this journey I don't know. I was 63 when I was diagnosed, and full-time to deal with this, to learn about it, to recover, everything. And I just don't know how you guys do it when you're trying to do all of that.
And I can hear you, but I'll tell you something. For me personally, my work, which was a big job, a lot of hours, actually helped me. It was a diversion. It was a challenge, and it got my mind off of a lot of things. And I'll tell you, looking back, I consider it a positive in that respect.
Good.
But I can hear what you're saying.
I'm in agreement with him because the work does kind of gets it off my mind. I can think about something else, and I can just kind of keep living, because I said if I stop working, you're just going to kind of focus in totally on yourself all the time.
And work is good. I've always liked my career. And of course, what was a career, the passion became an avocation. But at the same time, my wife would look at me and say, how do you go to work? You can't leave cancer. You go to work, you go to cancer. You come home, it follows you, and you live cancer.
But what you did, I think you're getting the support from other people, and then vice versa, and we're getting support from you. It kind of works both ways. It's not that you're just, speaking on cancer and prostate cancer specifically. You hearing our stories and everyone else's stories, and I think that makes you even stronger. And I think that's what, the way you're going about it.
One of the things that we've been talking about this is what's it like to live with the overhang, which has to be blunt, a fairly negative connotation. I want to ask a question the other way around. Has anyone in this room found a diagnosis of cancer and living with it to be a freeing experience?
My military background is Air Force, not as a flyer, but in aircraft a lot. I was in meteorology, spent a lot of time in the air. When I came back, the job that I had caused me to do a lot of travel. I've been very fortunate to travel to many places in the United States on business, a lot of flying for years. One morning I woke up and I just decided I'm not flying again. I don't know what cracked in my head, but I think looking back it might have been a control issue, but that's not important. I stopped flying. When I was told you have cancer, it flipped my life. What'd you say? Flip the script? Flip the script, Russ. It flipped the script for me. It turned me around. All of a sudden, what was important to me was my life, my wife, my family, not the freaking airplane. Do you know, after I was diagnosed, 2 months later, I flew down here to Virginia Beach to my niece's wedding. She's a Top Gun pilot, very proud of her. But I flew down for her wedding. I flew down to see my mom in Florida. I flew out to Arizona to see my grandkids. I flew down here for this. I've had about 5 or 6 flights in the last 18 months since I was diagnosed. And all of a sudden, priorities for me have changed. So what was that comment you said you want to smack somebody? Oh, so you got the good kind of cancer? The good outcome for me in this bad diagnosis was I started recognizing things that you think are important aren't.
Right.
My priorities have changed so much so.
It's the old cliche, on their deathbed, nobody ever talks about wishing they were back in the office. And because this has been my personal experience, is that a diagnosis of cancer has opened up an entire new world to me that I did not know existed. And that consists of the guys in this room, of all these other organizations we've talked about. And it's given me a sense of purpose that in my years as marketing high technology, I always felt like, well, that's good. I'm glad I'm earning a good living. But it was never kind of a sense that I was making a difference. And that's why I'm asking the question. And
it's a good one. I feel I'm a better person for it.
Yeah.
And I got some response on the blog a couple of weeks ago by saying, I will never say having cancer has any benefits or is a good thing.
No, you won't say that.
But there are pluses. Right. I'm much more relaxed. Right. It's like, oh, gee, the floorboard warped. Oh, well, nobody's got cancer.
Yes.
Yeah, so we live with the warped floorboard.
Right.
It doesn't bother me anymore.
That's exactly, that's the exact experience that I had. Things just no longer bothered me. It was, when I'm faced with something, it's, okay, well, maybe I can fix it, maybe not. and I'll get to it. You
So,
know?
why don't you guys call my wife then, tell her I really don't have to fix that doorstop? She's been bugging me. I don't care about
I've got 20 projects.
It's like, lots of houses have some chip paint, okay?
That's right. So that's, that's like, but you've sort of betrayed yourself a little, Greg, because you really have reduced some stress there.
That's right. You just,
I don't disagree that there have been changes that have been very positive out of this negative part of my life. But I still do have issues that I know I have a hard time trying to work at, and I think it's just our wiring.
Everybody who doesn't have issues, raise your hand.
Going back to someone telling you that you don't have any place to escape the cancer because you work with it every day. At times I think that that's more therapeutic because you have other people that you can talk to that are in the same boat. You're not talking to some doctor that, he's book smart on it, but he has no experience really with it. I found out that you can do what Facebook calls a secret group. And since then, I basically have buried myself in that, and just talking helped with the depression, helped with knowledge, and I end up feeling better when I'm able to try and help somebody with some of the other medications, like for the ED. I mean, just being able to know somebody's happy because something's working because of me explaining how to use one of the medications and stuff, and that's what's kept me sane.
The reward, the feeling of reward for me personally, maybe for others here, of making a difference in someone else's life and making their journey easier, it can't be put into monetary figure. And I started working in the nonprofit area in '96, coming out of real estate and banking. And I've gone through a number of iterations in nonprofit, but since I got diagnosed with prostate cancer, they've all been health related. And I was that sick in my second year of Lupron that I went on disability because I just wasn't able to function well enough to be able to work for more than about 3 or 4 hours a day, between the fatigue, the brain issues, and everything else. And what I feel is that has been a tremendous gift in allowing me to, help so many other folks. That's the best reward for me.
What you're talking about is finding purpose in your situation.
Yes.
And you've done that, Rusty. You do that in the fire department. You do that with the Pony Express.
Pony Express, yeah.
But I remember one night I gave a presentation to an Elks Club in Long Beach. And, I had several men and women saying, okay, I'm going to schedule my exam and stuff. And I drove out of the parking lot and I said, oh, thank God for my cancer. And that made me feel really uncomfortable. And I'm going, that's kind of creepy. And, so it took me 2 blocks to work it out. And I was like, no, thank God for my voice, which is giving purpose to this, which is helping others. And that's turning it around and doing something positive with it. Which helps.
Clearly, cancer's not a gift, but for me, the journey that I've been given through cancer has brought me many gifts and many friendships or connections with people I've never had in my life. And let's be honest, it makes us look at our own mortality. It makes us realize we have, as you and I were talking, we have a very finite time on this planet. And for many of us, I think it's the moment of trying to reconcile, what am I here for?
I've had a concept of sometimes we have to put on the mask.
Right.
Work. I work in a place that understands this. I work in a place that has understood it when I've broken down into tears. I've been a he-bitch. But you still have to put on the mask and do your best because you don't want people to think you're slipping.
That's a real guy thing, I think, but again, I guess that's a part to this audience.
Yeah.
I work as a consultant. I work in front of my computer and on the phone mostly. I do go see clients, but So I've not had to put on a mask on a day-to-day basis that I think any of you guys, Rusty, Jim, you guys are all still going to work in an office in a social setting. So I think the question is, how did that change? Do you feel consciously that you have to kind of look strong when you go in around other people, particularly colleagues you're working with, particularly your boss, for example?
Well, again, for me, I actually, a year post-surgery, I actually left my 23-year corporate career because my calling was to stop what I was doing, which I actually loved doing. I loved my past career, but it was my Oprah aha moment to go do something else. So I actually stepped out of corporate life to be a full-time stay-at-home father for several years, and then I started to navigate myself into places where I could do good for the world. And so I've chosen where I'm placing myself because, like you said, Dan, I'm very emotional about what I'm here for. And so I've had the luxury of putting myself into activities through writing, through speaking, through a radio show, and I'm now executive director of a cancer nonprofit. So I put myself into a world where all of those emotions are easier to display, kind of, or embraced. It's so that's what I've done.
But how about you, Bill? I mean, you're kind of the quintessential corporate guy here. That's.
Well, I would have to say that yeah, sure, I had to have a mask on, and especially with what I did. But I had some people around me, those that reported into me that I was close to, that I shared my situation with, but not the deep emotional side of it. But I know exactly what you mean, and not only at work, with certain social settings. It was a challenge for me to come here today. Dan has talked me into it, and I'm glad he did. But I know what you mean. I think a mask is a good description of it, and I would say that for me, I would keep the mask on and be private about the emotional minutes of it. But and I don't know that that's always healthy.
Did that add to stress, or was it sort of a neutral thing?
I think it puts stress. I think it creates stress because I'm a perfectionist by nature, and I think which doesn't help. That's kind of my wiring, and I think that if what I try to work on is not expecting perfection in life, whether it's with health, whether it's with work, or because life's not perfect, people aren't perfect. So I think for me, that's been my challenge, to just sort of accept some imperfections and recognize, look, you're emotional. I think the interesting thing is, and I think talking about the guy thing earlier, what I believe, and I'm not one of these people, so let me say that as I begin this statement. I think men who can express emotion, and I know we're taught from the time we're little boys, be strong, be a man, don't cry, don't do that. I think we've been taught that way, conditioned that way. And I think, though, that men who can cry in public, men who can express emotion openly, are actually stronger. They're more secure about themselves. Right. And I think it's healthier. I'm not one of those people, so I'll admit that. But I think that's the truth of the matter. So yeah, the mask was on, and is on not just in work and other places, except for those that I'm really close with.
Yeah, it's kind of like being normal. I mean, if you walk into a work,
what's that?
Yeah, no. So let's think about walking into the office. You're a prostate cancer survivor. Then over there is a guy with diabetes, and here's somebody with a heart condition. I mean, would we really want to walk in, to our place of work, and there's everybody standing with a sign around their neck saying, well, I've got, and there. So I think it's not so much in a way of putting on a mask. To me, it's just kind of, accepting the disease, accepting that you can do what you can do to mitigate it, and then just kind of create, continue on in a normal way. Because when you start to talk about, and we talked about this before, somebody says, well, how are you? It's, well, I have stage 3 prostate cancer, and I've got this. They don't want to know that. They may be supportive of you, okay, but if you really dump on them, they're gonna be sympathetic, but they're gonna be really uncomfortable. I think that one of the big problems, with this disease is there really isn't any post-treatment structure. Follow on, checklist, if you will, to let everybody know what's happening. Us Too tries to do it. I've been to a couple, I've talked to a lot of people, I'm not sure how successful that is. But I absolutely, and you talk about in your book, who's your team, your cancer team, okay? Now you've got 8 guys sitting around there, and every day is a couple of cases, and now you're taking the collective wisdom, okay, of all these guys talking about all the possible solutions, and maybe that's a model, okay, for guys, the guys that are able to open up and talk about the disease. And maybe what happens, and Rick, we were talking about your idea of these kind of remote WebEx groups. Some of that stuff gets captured, recorded, made available in the library for the guys that just can't bring themselves to come in and open up. They could sit and watch and take away those lessons and that information. So, but I haven't done the Lupron thing, and I'm hoping that
We're hoping. But we'll be there for you.
I've got all your email.
What's the stupidest thing anyone's ever said to you about your cancer?
I mean, besides you look so good.
That is the number one.
That's the number one
You
thing.
look great, and I go, and I have friends who are close enough, and they say, geez, you look great, and I go, what the hell were you expecting?
That's my response.
That's my response. You think I was going to be gone, looking like somebody in final stage hospice or something? I said, do you understand that prostate cancer is asymptomatic? And I look nice. I've got hair. Some of us do, but that's not the point. I've got hair.
Above your neck.
I've got hair.
Above your neck.
Right. I said, from here down, I'm a chihuahua. You want to look? That backs them right off. But what is this? You look good. What do they think we're going to look like?
People mean
well. This is, we talked about this a little earlier when Bob was talking. People want you to be well. When I finished radiation, I think everybody thought that I was going to come out sort of this desiccated corpse.
Yep.
And, I just sort of walked in the room, you haven't lost your hair, and people don't understand about prostate cancer. Chemo's like, you don't want to get the chemo, because that's the end, guys. But they really want to kind of check you off in their little mental box of worry. Oh, he's made it through. You're good. Yeah. Check. And they have absolutely the best intentions. And you need to take that statement just as a thank you. Although when I'm in a bad mood, I say, I wish I felt as good as I look. But
I've actually trained people to say, I hope you're doing well.
Right. They're trying to be as positive because they don't know what
They're trying to pull you back.
They want to pull you back. They want the old you.
What else are they gonna say?
Yeah, cancer, the dread disease.
Is that on the agenda? That what he just said is one of the things that bugs me about cancer as a disease, that stigma, and I'm trying to figure out why that stigma.
Well, that's what separates what Bob was about. You see people with diabetes, you see people with other chronic diseases. They're not associated with death like cancer. I mean, people live for years with diabetes, and so while people have those chronic illnesses, asthma, diabetes, they're not as, I think.
But it goes even beyond that. I get a sense from people that it's your fault.
Entire books have been written about this. There's a book out there called Cancer, the Dread Disease. It actually looks at the historical reasons of why cancer. My wife has had MS for 30 years. I got cancer, and cancer trumps everything. And that created a humongous issue in our relationship, for which I'm happy to say Jim therapy is fabulous. But cancer has that. I don't know if it's like the syllables, the word, it's hard, but it does trump all other diseases, and you kind of have to take that into account, and just let people know, I'm still here,
But on the
I'm doing well.
Token, though, prostate cancer is the ass end of, pun, of the cancer family.
Nicely
like to rephrase that.
You asked about what's the dumbest thing people have said to you? I'd like to pose a question. What's the most hurtful thing? Has anybody had hurtful things said to them about being with cancer? I had an experience that was devastating for me, and it was somebody who I thought was before that. And I still do think they're a good friend, but I thought, where did that comment come from? When I got through with my radiation after the failed surgery, and my PSA was very low, my surgical oncologist, when Val and I went to meet with them after the radiation was done, we got all the paperwork back. I said, so where are we at? Where do we go from here? He said, well, right now it's undetectable. You're gonna stay on Lupron, and that's gonna be palliative, not curative. We're gonna see if it keeps, pushing the PSA down and keeps it down so we can get the best chance for making it. And he says, but for all intents and purposes, you can call yourself cured, you can call yourself in remission. He says they're all words. Choose what you want. So when I shared this with friends, one of them said, well, are you sure you really had cancer?
Oh, God.
And I gotta tell you, it stunned me.
That's interesting. And one of the things that, thinking about how people react to this, and, I wrote a little editorial once, and the title of this was, Cancer is Never Real Until It's Personal. So cancer is something that we all know, and everybody knows, is bad. We all, I think, kind of know that struggle as we will, we haven't mastered it. We don't know how to cure it. It's probably the most feared thing that anybody can get. And so we all are theoretically against it, but cancer is never real until you actually have it. So you become a cancer victim or a survivor or whatever, a patient, then all of a sudden it's real. And I believe that that is the problem, one of the biggest challenges, with reaching out to men, because I think we all live by what I call the fighter pilot syndrome. Having spent a career in the military and been in combat, I think that if we ever thought it was our day to die, we'd never take off. Never climb out of the foxhole. So it's always going to happen to somebody else, okay? And that's why guys live the way we do. I mean, we just kind of wound up with this position in society. It's our job to go out and, hunter-gatherer, bring it back, be fearless, do that kind of a thing. So to get guys to the point where we can talk about things like, gals do, I think that is a huge challenge.
Two things: survivor, patient, battle, or what else do you call it? I think those are very personal, things that people want to assume. But I run into it, and it's like, don't call me a survivor yet. You can do that in 3 years. That's my personal opinion. What does everyone else feel?
I think I voiced mine. I don't look at it. I look at prostate cancer or any disease as just what it is, a disease, as a continuum that is part of living and part of life. And I don't like to categorize. But then again, that's me. I don't like to categorize myself. But I don't like to categorize things to that degree because I feel, one, it does not identify who I am, and two, it causes you to focus too much on something maybe in the wrong direction. You're focusing on the negative when you're saying, I'm fighting this. Focus on the positive and say, I have this, but I'm moving on. So I look at it that way. That's the way I approach it, and I see it as a continuum, as life.
That's good at your level because you're all done with your treatments, and now you're just living this life of, hey, everything's good until I find out it may be bad again.
I'm prepared. I'm prepared for two things: recurrence and death.
Pretty much guaranteed on the second anyway.
I've accepted the possibilities.
Yeah.
And I really believe that acceptance and that attitude has brought me the peace.
Yeah,
to deal with
that's
this.
a good word, peace. I think one of the things that my diagnosis did for me was help me really feel comfortable about the fact that we are mortal, that there is a mortality here, and it's not necessarily cancer, but it helps you come to the realization that I am who I am going to die, and whether I die with or from cancer is yet to be seen. But I'm more at peace with that whole part of my psyche, my thinking. What I am very conflicted about is who I am right now, because the new norm for me, I still haven't established it, and I don't know when I will, because I'm still in a little bit of patient care, if you will. I've still got Lupron shots to go. I still have to come off. I still have to wait. I have to get measured. I have to see where it's going to go. So in some ways, I look at somebody like Craig or somebody like Bob, how many years that they've been free of it, and I'm going, I wonder how they feel really inside every day, because they wake up and go, it's been 13 years, it's been 12 years, it's been 7 years, it's been whatever. You go, wow, that's great. I want to be there.
You used to go to the office every day and you'd ask somebody, how you doing? And they'd say, well, I'm fighting a cold, or I'm fighting the flu. And I'll bet it doesn't have for you, Tom, the resonance of what it is you're talking about when you hear that word being used with cancer. And so with me, the first thing I realized in this journey, everybody handles it his or her own way. There's no right or wrong. And if somebody wants to call it a battle, if somebody wants to call it a dance, if somebody wants to call it music, I've called it on occasions a contest that it's pushing at me and I'm pushing back. But whatever the words are that work for you, those are great words to use, right, because they work for you.
I would like to say something about the word. Dan and I have a different view on the word survivor, because in October, I was diagnosed in January of 2009. In October of 2009, I went to Top Notch Tattoos in Elgin, Illinois, and got this tattoo, which is in Elvish, which is J.R.R. Tolkien, Lord of the Rings. And I want to thank our sound guy who accurately identified it as Elvish yesterday. I can't tell you how thrilling that is, because it's been called everything from Sanskrit to Hebrew to Arabic and beyond. It's in Elvish says prostate cancer survivor. And I got that in the before I had been diagnosed a year. Because for me, survivor means, and I look at this every day, I don't know about you guys, but at some point early in the morning, you probably wake up and say, oh yeah, I have cancer. So when I look at this, this means I've got another day of surviving, not just cancer, but of living. And maybe I should have said prostate cancer living, or living with prostate cancer, I don't know. But surviving to me is a process. It's not an end state, which is why I have trouble with the 3 years, the 5 years, whatever. I don't know what magic thing happens. I guess now I can fit in your category because it's been more than 3 years. But that surviving as a process is really important to me.
Someone told me within the first 12 hours of my diagnosis that I was a survivor right then and there. And that actually was one of the most powerful gifts that anyone gave me along that path, because the next morning when I woke up and had that first day waking up, I actually thought to myself, I'm surviving. Right. I am a survivor right now. And it was really powerful. That said, I actually tend to talk more about my journey. You know, I talk to people about my journey with cancer or living with cancer. And that just works more for me, with all due respect to survivors. And I think it's a wordsmithing thing, but boy, can we get passionate about it. We've all lost people in our lives from lots of things. Just like when a loved one dies, and there's no, some people say, oh, you need a year to get over it. I don't know. You need whatever you need to deal with that. Mm-hmm. Cancer's the same thing. Don't ever put yourself on a time frame, ever. I'm 7 years out, and I have moments that just come out of the blue that you never expect. So don't ever compare yourself to someone else. It's a journey.
Part of the strength of seeing it as a journey is that sense of discovery, that this is an experience in self-discovery, of learning about others, of learning about things you never thought of, meeting people you never would have met.
Learning about yourself.
Right. You know, right. It's a very powerful word, but yet I have a former colleague who's dealing with brain cancer in Australia, and he says, oh, I have this friend who calls it a journey, but it's really a slog.
Well, actually, the use of those words can identify how you are handling this situation, how you're facing it. You know.
As long as I'm going in for a PSA test and I'm sitting there sweating bullets until I get the answer, I can't say I guess I never really felt comfortable saying survivor. I still do, but I never knew why until now, really.
You know, I was never comfortable with the word survivor, only having been, being, I guess, a little over 2 years into this. But I like your theory of a continuum, because, we can all look at the statistics. You can all, and of course, when you have a higher statistical chance of so-called cure, that makes you feel better. But you never know. So statistics are what they are. But I like your concept of a continuum and looking at life that way. Really.
But remember, survivor is the successor to victim. And I have felt
good way to look at
and been called a lot of things in my life, but don't use victim. I am not a victim.
Anyone?
No, I've never.
No, I have to admit, I felt victimized 5 minutes after the diagnosis. Then it went away.
Warrior is a term, it's sort of a macho, engaged in a term, and I thought, well, maybe that's the term for me, but I'm not enough of an aggressor, I guess, that goes with battle. And it's I think what we're going to come down and say, look, the English language is a very rich language. use the word that works for you.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of battle, but I like the active fight, and that's why coming off of treatment has been so difficult.
Yeah.
I'm not doing anything now.
Right, yeah. Right. Well, I submit that's our male tendency to want to work on stuff and fix stuff. And, and I know when I came off of radiation, it was like going to summer camp. I write about this, that I had really bonded with those radiation techs, all of whom go to nice school. And when the next day came after my last thing, it was like, whoa. It was a huge, radiation for me was a mountaintop experience. And because I was doing something. And to lose those people, lose that connection.
I wrote in my blog when I finished radiation that I felt I'd gotten so close to the radiation team that I felt like I had been traded to another team. That they got to stay and keep playing together.
That's right.
But I got traded, and I was gone.
That's a good metaphor.
Out of the dugout, gone.
Let's talk support systems. How important are they? What is your support system? What was your support system? Why did you need one? Or
I mean, you're a firefighter, like we say, pretty macho and stuff. And I did find out there's a few firefighters who had it, and I reached out to them, but they weren't evasive, but they didn't have a lot of information. So you kind of just have to go on the computer, read information here or there, talk to your doctor, about different options. But I think a support group like this, and it's great. And as time went on after I got diagnosed and had the operation, I try to make sure that what happened to me won't happen to the next person in the sense that they won't be out there by themselves. You may not even get prostate cancer, but just get your physicals and maintain your body. Know it as best as you can, because something's going to be wrong with you one time or another. Some people call me, and several colleagues have come down with the cancer. I kind of reached out to them and told them these are some of the options. I'm not a doctor. I'm not going to claim to be a doctor. I'm not going to tell you what choice and decision to make, but I'm going to tell you there are things out there and choices you can make, and these are some of the areas of research you can get or people you can contact, even if it's just me. Just as to talk through, and that sometimes I think is a huge help, and I think that's something that it just needs to be done.
When I went through my my whole cancer journey and stuff, I didn't know where to go. The only people I was aware of who had prostate cancer were 25, 35 years older than I was. And I'm thinking, as I'm recalling it, I had several people kind of in my inner circle encourage me that I needed some support. And so just kind of following their lead, I actually reached out to a cancer wellness center that was kind of near where we went, and they had a men's support group, and so I started going to those once a week, maybe a month or so after my surgery. But truthfully, it was predominantly men who were 70 years old plus, and many of them dealing with really tough things. And I, in spite of still being in recovery, I always maintain a pretty positive outlook. So I found myself giving more of the support. I found myself being a facilitator. Sure. And I remember I kind of made a decision, I don't think it was selfish, but I just said, I can't do this. I can't be doing this right now for them. And so I actually backed out of it and kind of went undercover for a couple years before I could even deal with the whole cancer support thing. And then there came a time in my life, personally, once I got well past my own kind of emotional journey without support, that I realized I need to give back now, or I need to give, and so I found an organization to give to, Immerman Angels, which is a one-on-one support group, and that's how I deal with it, kind of emotionally. Is like, I didn't get it, but that only encourages me to give it. No one should have to go through what I went through at the age 45.
To this day, I have not gone to a cancer support group as a cancer person. And I think because I found, since I was active in my church, I had a lot of male friends around me. We got together on a weekly basis. That became my support group, even though they didn't have cancer. And that actually turned out to be a great thing, because they're in a position to encourage. We share deeply about a lot of other stuff. And so I just want to make the point that I think support groups are where you find them in terms of how you're plugged into your community and what you do and who your friends are.
I never went to a support group, but I feel that I have a group of supporters.
Right.
And
That's a good way of putting it.
those are largely, for me, they've been women with cancer of their own, whether it was breast cancer, lymphoma, or whatever. I do have 2 men cancer buddies, one of whom had prostate cancer, one of whom is lymphoma. And I find it useful, and I think they do too, to just go out and just talk.
Yeah.
And
you can talk
one guy
in
got
person.
in trouble with his wife because he said something like, well, Bill understands. And it was kind of like, yeah. Does he cook? Yeah. But there is a wavelength between 2 people who have experienced cancer, and that is a very powerful vibe to touch into, and I wouldn't make this journey without it.
Right. My biggest support, other than my wife, who I put right at the top of the list, she's been a rock for me, but I have a niece, and Erin is a 10-year survivor from leukemia, and she walks the 60-mile, 3-day, 20 miles a day, she does it in Philly, she does it in Boston, where she lives near, she's doing it in Chicago with one of my other nieces. She's part of the Pink Angels. They formed this group, and it's a trademark or whatever thing now, and the Pink Angels go out and walk for women's cancer issues, and she's, like I said, she's not breast cancer, she's leukemia, but she is my #1 fan. She would call me almost daily in the early days. How you doing? How you feeling? How's everything going? What do you need? And it's almost become not a joke, but lighthearted. It's like, you're there for me, I'm there for you. And it wasn't that one person was just incredible that they reached out. But I think the most important support group has quickly, for me, in a short couple of months following the blog and then culminating in this event today, this is my support group now. I've got blogs to have read, I've got responses that have come, and then I put a name to, he's the guy that talked about the tomatoes and being Italian. But so it's a face with a name. It's a name that is part of the named and unnamed brotherhood that we're part of, and I gotta tell you, I am so freaking energized out of this weekend. It's incredible.
For me, I wasn't one to talk a lot about it, but my support group initially was my wife and daughter. And as time went on, a close friend who I knew through business, who had been trying to get out to lunch with me, and finally I took him into my confidence and told him what was going on. And he had then introduced me to a doctor who's a wonderful friend now, who's Dr. Mike Mitro. He's a urologist in Philadelphia. And, he became an enormous source of support to me, one, because I saw him as an expert, but he's also got a wonderful way about him. So I would say a combination of my family and those 2 guys were my support. And then a few colleagues at work, that a few of my direct reports who I was close to, became very, I took into my confidence, and they were tremendously supportive. I didn't tell everyone at work, but I told them, and they were all women. and one of them who was a breast cancer survivor, and the other two were just really good people, and I would talk to them from time to time. And then I met Dan, and Dan, we started a relationship when I was at NASDAQ, and we ended up doing a bell closing. But then I got to know Dan differently, and would call him from time to time, and of course connected with him, and then began to read his blog, and found that to be very helpful. And I agree with Greg. This has been nothing like I expected these last few days. It's been very uplifting. It's been a combination of knowledge and just very positive and energizing to be a part of this. So that's my story.
I want to comment on support groups, because I think support groups serve two functions. They can serve an emotional function, but very often with prostate cancer support groups, they tend to gloss over that emotional side, and what they become is almost like a technical advisory group. And I think that technical advisory aspect of prostate cancer support groups is very important for a lot of men, because the decision-making function going in when you're first diagnosed is very difficult with prostate cancer. It's probably more difficult than with most other cancers, because there are many options and you have to find the one that suits your lifestyle best. When the cancer returns, there are a lot of options and things that you can do to help manage, things you can do for yourself, technical terms that are getting thrown around by the doctor that you may not understand, and all of those issues that are raised on the technical side, if you're in a good support group with a good moderator, can really help. And I've seen that. I used to co-moderate a group. I've seen it. And ironically, I've created, through the support groups, now a core of 3 or 4 very close friends. Now, I'm probably different to every one of you in this room, because I don't have a partner. I don't have kids. I live on my own. So I went through all this pretty much on my own.
There's one other aspect of support that I just want to talk about, to share with guys who come behind us, and that is the importance of asking for support from your inner circle. And for me, again, as a single dad, I had a 9-year-old, a 13-year-old, and a 16-year-old at the time. And I was faced with, how do I handle this? Do I handle it stoically and keep them out of it, or choose another path? And I chose another path, and the path was to bring them into my journey in an age-appropriate way. And what I did with each of them was I gave them each a job. My youngest son's job was to hug me every day. And my oldest son's job, who plays guitar, was to play music for me when I just needed to. And my daughter's job was to be my official cheerleader. And as silly as that sounds, it was the most powerful way for them to participate in my journey.
Rewarding.
And it brought them on my journey. It gave me more than anyone in this planet gave me. And I think it's important for men to know, to not be afraid to ask and say, I need you, and you got to be careful. You got to know who you ask. You got to know, and you got to trust those people that they'll come through. But I think that's an important thing for us to share with men, is to ask for help, but ask for specific help of our friends, of our family, of our children, of those that love the people that love us.
My wife's been really the best support group I could,
Well, yeah, and so has my wife been. I mean, she's been the one who would meet me halfway down the stairs and help me the rest of the way up. But I've often said, I think cancer is harder on the caregiver than it is even on the patient.
Yes.
Because all they can do is watch.
Right. Because initially when I got it, she was the strongest one. Because like I said, I thought, I was going right off the cliff. I just might as well just jumped off the bridge, Golden Gate Bridge. But she was the strongest one. I put on the great front. But, when I went in to get the surgery and she knew, all the routine of that, I was stronger then, but she kind of fell to the side a little bit, but she kept a good face on through the other parts of the operation, which was still really good.
And often people don't give them support. I mean, they'll ask us, or they'll say this, even as silly as we think their question or well-meaning statement is, but they don't ask the caregiver, how are you doing?
That's what impressed me about my brothers-in-law, because they thought of both of us. Because they said, well, you know, Ann's going to drive you every day. That's going to be hard on her, too, because she has work to do as well. And so that was impressive. That was very impressive. And you're right. I mean, that's rare.
The partner is the second set of ears in meeting with the docs.
Yes, yes.
And you know, it's one thing. One of the other of you is going to be asking questions. The other is a note taker, because it's so easy to get all this information. It's all foreign and new, and it's coming at you. And that's just been a huge support for me in terms of my wife doing that.
In the radiology oncologist's office after the biopsy and after the diagnosis, and then he wanted to do his DRE as well. Well, my wife came with me for this meeting, and we were sitting in his office, and she was sitting next to me, and you know, we talked, and he told me all the things that were possible. And then he said, now I'd like to do an exam. And he looked at my wife and said, you can leave if you want to. And she looked at me and she said, do I want to? And I said, do you? And she said, no. I said, well, sit there. Don't worry about it. Not a big deal. But that was, you know, that kind of thing. She is your second.
That'd be sweet.
Just to add one different little perspective, on the weekend, for me, love this group, love you men. But for me, the most powerful takeaway was when we were up on that stage yesterday, when all those researchers were coming up, and I happened to be next to Rusty, and I was the first person, and you know, a lot of you are kind of buried back behind there, so you probably couldn't see what I saw. I had to do everything possible to hold myself from just breaking into tears, because for me, it was like this flood of the last 7 years of my life, watching and wishing that those young people really understood the power and potential hope of what they're doing for guys like us. And it was a real emotionally positive moment to realize all the good things that you guys are doing for the world.
What we're doing here, what you're doing, is going to be exponential on the website. I wanted this to be a moment where men who can't participate, it's like they're looking in the window, they're looking through their camera eye, and they're going, yes, I feel that way, or I feel a little bit differently, but it's all valid. And to me, that's the most important part of doing this, so that we can share and help other men, pull them out of the shadows when they're feeling isolated or lonely or vulnerable or depressed. And I think the result of this documentary is going to be an important tool for so many men. So thank you for building it.
You know, we come to the table not knowing each other at all, but we share, next to our family, the most intimate experience in our life. We experience our health and our prostate cancer journey. So it was a very easy connection to each other, a tremendous amount of support and love that we clearly and quickly have for each other.
I'm just excited for my kids and my grandkids' future with all the strides that are being made. And I thank everyone that's involved with this, right on down to the young investigators that are coming on board. And it's going to make a world of difference for mankind.
It's just an incredible mix of finding out what's going on the research side, and then being with basically what became a band of brothers because of our shared experiences, which were all different, yet in some other way all exactly the same.
I learned in the first 2 hours more at this meeting than I've ever known about not just prostate cancer, but everything surrounding the biomedics, medicine. It was just incredible. And then, of course, today's meeting was another incredible, fabulous afternoon. So summing it up, that's the word, fabulous.
I think that this weekend was very special for me personally. It did two things. It validated where I'm at and where I'm going with my cancer treatment, because I had a chance to meet and talk with 10 other guys who are either going through or have gone through where I'm at now, so you don't feel so alone.
My overall takeaway from being here comes from being around the young investigators They have great minds, they have great hearts, and they think they're researching prostate cancer, but they're really discovering hope.
There's some things I think I can take back to, where I work in the fire service and be, positive on the future of some of the research that's going on here, and not just in prostate cancer, which is definitely fantastic. And I think that group setting was great too, meeting the other men and the different age groups, which is very unique. And like I said, I think it's a lot I've learned from this opportunity.
I'd do it again tomorrow or next weekend. It's been just terrific. I mean, information, the people that we've met, the new friends we've made, the new knowledge we've gained. It couldn't have been better. It couldn't have been better. That's it in a nutshell.